I get asked all of the time if I offer tab versions of tunes, and so today I thought I would share a bit about the difference between sheet music, aka standard notation, and tablature. Hi, I'm Lauren, a professional violinist and fiddle player currently living in Nashville, Tennessee, and I help thousands of people achieve their violin and fiddle goals. So if that sounds like something you'd be interested in, consider subscribing to this YouTube channel. We would love to have you here. Alright, so let's talk about two main ways to read music: sheet music and tablature. Both have been around for centuries, but they serve different purposes, and depending on your musical goals, one might make more sense for you to focus on. So let's take a closer look at what they are, the pros and cons of each, and which one I recommend if you're just learning to read music. Let's start with sheet music, otherwise known as standard notation. It's made up of notes organized on a staff with a clef, key signature, and time signature at the beginning. It can be as simple as a one-line melody or as complex as a full orchestra score, the kind that conductors use. Sheet music is basically the universal language of musicians. It's used across nearly every instrument and genre, from beginner lessons to professional symphonies. Tablature, or tab for short, on the other hand, looks completely different. It's most common with fretted string instruments like guitar, ukulele, or sometimes banjo. Instead of a staff and note symbols, tab shows strings with numbers indicating where to place your fingers. It's incredibly simple and straightforward. You can often begin playing without knowing note names, keys, or even rhythms. And that's why many self-taught players start with tab. It feels faster and easier to understand. Now, let's talk about the benefits and drawbacks of each system. Sheet music gives you everything you need in order to play a piece: pitch, key, tempo, dynamics, and rhythm. It's also universal and much more commonly understood than tab, so if you're playing with other musicians, you'll often be able to read from the same part and instantly communicate. The downside with sheet music is it does take more time to learn. You have to be able to understand note symbols, time signatures, and other musical markings. But once you do, that knowledge transfers to any instrument or piece of music. Tablature, on the other hand, is quick and easy to start with. It doesn't require music theory knowledge, and you can play songs right away. But that simplicity can hold you back in the long run. Because tab doesn't show rhythm, key, or musical expression, you don't really learn how the music works, just what to play. It's a bit like learning math by memorizing the answers without understanding how to solve the problems. You might end up playing for years without knowing what notes you're playing or how they work together. So now that we've covered some differences between standard notation and tablature, the pros and cons of each, let's talk a little bit about my personal experience. As a classically trained violinist, I actually didn't know that tablature existed when I was learning, because it just wasn't used. As I said, tab is more geared toward fretted string instruments, and so it was never really meant for the violin. But I will say I can relate on some level, because when I was a young student, I would sometimes associate note names with finger numbers. Unfortunately, that habit caught up to me later when I had to sight read quickly in my youth symphony. It's much harder to unlearn shortcuts once they're built in. And that's the same challenge for players who start with tab. It's easy in the beginning, but switching to sheet music later is often confusing and frustrating. You really have to completely rewire the way that you think about what you're seeing on the page. So while both sheet music and tablature have their place, if your goal is to truly understand your instrument and how music works, communicate easily with other musicians, and build a solid foundation for theory and more advanced playing, then sheet music is definitely the way to go. Sure, it may take a little more time up front, but that time is an investment in your long-term musical growth. By learning to read music, the notes, the rhythms, the key signatures, you're setting yourself up for success in any style or ensemble. So what are your thoughts? Are you team sheet music or team tab? Let me know in the comments below. And speaking of sheet music, if you're interested in learning some new tunes, I have tons of arrangements on my website, so feel free to check those out in the link in the description box below. And if you liked this video and found it to be helpful, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and maybe even share it with a friend who's learning to read music. And until next time, happy practicing. Many of the tunes that I teach here on the Tune Project are selected by my Patreon members. So if you'd like to have a say in the tunes that are featured on this channel, consider joining us on Patreon.